Hello, Malty. Mischievous Malt Merriments. And thank you to John Thurston for the malt mention, introducing here at the Whisky Bothy. Ralphie Review, Whisky Review, Malt Moment Review, number 1047, which is Balblair 15-year-old Highland single malt whisky. This is a brand of Scotch single malt I have reviewed at least 10 times in the history of my channel, and most of the time I've thoroughly enjoyed it, although a word of caution, because we do need these words of caution fairly early on in a review video. It's the landscape these days. In my last review, number 899, when I specifically reviewed the 15-year-old version of Balblair, which I'm doing again, come to that shortly, I gave it 88 out of 100, but I gave a cautionary statement. And it was that this isn't quite what it used to be. And my opinion, having tasted a reasonable amount of this whisky and given it time, is that that opinion still stands, and that, to be honest, I'm really looking at the auction houses now for old Balblairs, for a very simple reason. It is not a collectible brand. It is not high status amongst the investment community, and therefore, quite simply, it's less likely to be faked, particularly at a younger age. The reason I've bought a bottle of the 15-year-old is that it gives me an opportunity to review a mainstream brand that's widely available internationally, that's given an integrity delivery in the bottle at 46%, and that has an interesting flavour profile that's not been sanitised too much over recent years by the policy of engineering higher alcohol yields out of the per tonne of barley that unfortunately a few whisky companies seem to have invested in and then started bragging about it, which seems a strange decision. This is bottled at 46%, off to a good start. It's non-chill filtered, it's natural colour, it says so on the label of the bottle, which really matters. Yep, I know you've been paying attention over the years, because the label's the contract between the producer and the customer. The box that it comes in, I frankly, get rid of it as soon as you can. It's just a boring, dull, featureless waste of paper. They could have done something more imaginative. It is so generic, and it's the sort of box that you used to start barbecues with, right? There, yeah, that's you recycling that cardboard container. And another thing with the presentation I have to point out is that whatever you do, do not drop the bottle or leave it lying on its side, because the cork, right, is a broad cork and it doesn't fit particularly snugly into the bottle. It will hold its integrity for a short while. But the last time I the cats tipped it over for me, I came back to discover a wonderful smell coming from my carpet. Fortunately, not a lot. But this cork is what you call a loose fit. And I'll tell you why, because if you look very closely at it, you'll see that it tapers. It tapers out towards the actual end of the stopper that goes into the bottle, and it tapers in towards the wooden holding plinth. In my opinion, not a very competent design. Corks or any fastenings should be a bit more secure, and I think Balblair, to be honest, it would suit a solid plastic screw top, which would be ideal. But anyway, let's get back to the whisky itself. We're talking Northeast Highland. We're talking north of Inverness. And we're talking about the other distilleries in the area, Glenmorangie, Dalmore, Glenord. They tend to have strong signatures when they're not over-sanitised and neutered down for delivery as brands. So there's a lot of character you'll find in all the northeastern and northern Highland single malts. And you see this in the new distilleries, the Wolfburn and the Glenwivis. And Glenwivis, by the way, is not that far from Balblair. In fact, it's its next door neighbour, really. But I have a historical soft spot for this whisky. But I have to say, I regard it now as less exceptional than it once was. It's not that long ago. It's definitely in my recent living memory, and I'm not going back that far, when Balblair was frequently heavily discounted in the supermarket and had the same status as Ardmore, Tom and Toole, and Jura. Fortunately, they finally understood what their brand was worth, and we got some wonderful bottlings of all the ages coming from this distillery. And these were magical malt moments, they really were. And what happens is we're affected by the history of our whisky consumption when we discover a brand of whisky, a style, an identity, a signature of single malt, and it really, particularly in the first time, we discover the magic of the moment, the magic of the malt moment, and we just linger with it because we know the quality of what it is, and we understand that our palate is still getting used to it and still giving us the most exciting first encounter. It's just like listening to music. When we hear music for the first time and we love it, but we don't understand why, but we start to listen to it more and more. There's the first, what you call the virgin moments, in which we bond heavily and emotionally with the music, and obviously with the whiskey. It's a good comparison. But eventually it settles down, and it doesn't really wear off until we get to more modern times with more modern casks, which do not have the breadth and depth of maturation that they used to have, for a very simple reason. It's the way that the oak is prepared, which is used in the barrel staves, both for bourbon barrels and increasingly for sherry casks. They are not air dried, which takes 2 or 3 years and costs the major corporations money, which they hate to spend. Absolutely hate it. That's why they employ office people, push pens and count the beans, and probably hate the product. It's just a job to them. Even as it eats their soul, it's what they're happy to tolerate in their life, and the result is that negativity transpires through in the cost clipping. And cost clipping isn't a major cost cut. It's just clipping the quality of something along the way, whether it be buying a higher alcohol yielding grain that's more heavily genetically modified and more reliable going through the machinery, or whether it be getting cheaper wood from the forest because the producers of the wood can kiln dry. Literally, I mean seriously, literally, they will put the green wood staves through a baker's oven to force the excess water out of the wood, to dry the wood, to accelerate the conditioning of the wood, and to temper it for its suitability in coopering, because coopers can't use fresh wet wood, although they can be phenomenal as in our staves. This is all about cutting costs and speeding up the efficiency of operation. And when the producers talk about their efficiency, they're talking about the efficiency of their profit generation, not the efficiency of sustaining complex flavour delivery to the palates of discerning, fussy, cash-invested customers like you and I, who get relegated to the passive obedience status of dumb consumers, who are just waiting to lap up, like little doggies at the dinner bowl, all the marketing messages that they want to dish out. Now, in fairness to Bob Blair, they are light on marketing, so we don't have to contend with the same condescending damage that you're now getting from Ardbeg, for example, or Glenmorangie, for example, and definitely we've had for a while from Macallan. But anyway, I've given this time in the glass to settle down and open up. I'm rolling it around the inside of the glass, coating the inside with the wet alcohol to start to chase off more of the smells. What are we getting? We're getting something which is citrus and slightly cider vinegar. We're getting something which is slightly greenwood and charwood immature, but we're also getting 15 years of maturation, a traditional 15 years. It's more than just a passing age statement. You can feel that the wood influence on the whisky has gone the full 15 years. Probably at this stage you'd be better off with the 12-year-old Balblair, where you're getting a stronger presence of the wonderful, concise, colourful and characterful spirit signature coming from the stills, because that's what you get in younger whisky, which is not so heavily influenced by the cask. Why? Because it's not had so much time in the cask for it to happen. So there's a lot of positives here, but perhaps it's over familiarity now. Perhaps it's just acute awareness of the older generation of Balblairs. And it's certainly not an opinion isolated to the brand. This is happening with a lot of whiskies. And this is actually where I must commend the small and newer distilleries. Even in their youthfulness, their greater investment in cask pairing to their spirit is really starting to stand out more and more. And I'll compliment Isla Rassi for starters on this one. But anyway, taste. Sharp. Almost honey cider vinegar. It's a real sharp one. This needs water. The casks have been competent and nothing more. That's half a teaspoon. Look, here's the rest. Now you're probably going, hey Ralphie, what's going on here? You normally add a full teaspoon of whiskey, particularly 46%. You add the full 5 millilitres and now you're only adding 2.5 millilitres. What's going on? I'll tell you what's going on. This is a much more fragile malt than it used to be. It's more delicate. And I noticed putting the full 5 millilitres of water into the glass when I've been testing this and researching it has over diluted it and compromised the delivery of the flavour, which suggests to me that the fullness of flavour is a little bit thinner than it used to be. Anyway, we give it a few minutes and we'll stick our nose back into the glass and start to get things a bit more positive, because there is a competent single malt going on here. But it's not the quiet shining star it used to be. Sorry folks, just letting you know. If you're buying it, it's worth buying, but be careful and don't pay a hefty premium, because it won't be worth it. Once you add water, the nose becomes less vinegar, more citrus. There's a charming little cereal fusile note a graininess, a grittiness, a dry, almost Manuka honey note, which is refreshing. There's also a touch of malt extract, slightly scotched malt extract coming off the nose. So it is a good, crisp, clean, colourful Scotch single malt. It becomes sharp, sake-like, cider-like, definitely. There is prominent cider notes. And I'm talking the rich apple cider, scrumpy almost, coming from Somerset in England. Not something you get too drunk on too often, by the way, just to warn you, if you happen to be in Somerset, staying at a farm, and they offer you a gallon jar of scrumpy. Please don't make the same mistake I did. But I was young and nobody warned me. Anyway, farmers don't seem to mind when you're throwing up outside a barn, because they know the goats will clean it up later. Back to the whiskey. Just a little water will take this where it needs to go, and please give it time. Give it at least half an hour. I know I say 1 minute each year, 1 minute in the glass for each year in the cask. So we're looking at 15 years. And I think there's some whiskey in here a little bit older, but this needs twice that time, because the cask influence has been a bit brutal, bit harsh, and a little bit wood citrusy for the slightly wrong reasons. However, over time, it settles and the signature of the single malt reasserts itself. It does need time. This is an ideal bottling in which you pour 2 glasses, an hour apart. You pour 1 glass, you put your drop of water in it, and then you put a lid over it. An hour later you pour another glass, and then you add your water immediately, and you have a wee sip of the raw pour, and then you have a sip of the settled pour. With some brands you will see a marginal difference between the two. With this you will see a substantial difference, and the rewarding difference will be the time factor in giving this the time it absolutely needs to settle down and lose its aggression and its initial hostile impact, and becomes a much more interesting and rewarding whisky. Time for Maltmark. Here you go, malt mates. 82 out of 100. That is my contemporary Maltmark. I know. Say, hey Ralphie, last time you reviewed this you gave it 88. Right, now 88's the old mark. So effectively I've reduced it to 55 if you want to use the old mark calibration. It's not just the whisky that's changing. We are changing. As we get more experienced, as we get more aware and our palates become more sophisticated through our engagement and long-term responsible consumption of quality liquors, inevitably we will experience a slight law of diminishing returns. But let me reassure you, it's not all negative, because when we discover a really, really good whisky, we're appreciating it for what it is so much more. Bye.